The Lammas Hireling. After the fair, I'd still a light heart and a heavy purse. He struck so cheap, and kettle dotted on him in his time. Mine only dropped heifers fat as cream. Gilles doubled. I grew fond of company that knew when to shut up. Then one night, disturbed from dreams of my dear late wife, I hunted down her torn voice to his pale form. Stock still in the light from the dark lantern, stark naked, but for one bloody boot of foxtrap. I knew him a warlock, a cow with leather horns, to go into the hair gets you muckle sorrow. The wisdom runs muckle care. I levelled and blew the small hour through his heart. The moon came out by its yellow witness. I saw him fur over like a stone mossing. His lovely head thinned, his top lip gathered. His eyes rose like bread. I carried him in a sack that grew lighter at every step and robbed him from a bridge. There was no splash. Now my hurt's elf shot. I don't dream, but spend my nights costing ball from half crowns and my days here. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It has been an hour since my last confession. Do you understand anything at all from this particular poem itself, Gulshan?
Mm,
Anything at all?
it's like a person's obviously done something they feels guilty for, but it doesn't really make sense like what he's done.
Mm-hmm. Is that it?
Yeah,
Anything else you'd like to say?
no.
Move on to, okay. All right, let's take a look at this particular link first. The Lammas Hireling. The title relates to an old harvest festival, traditionally on August the 1st. This would be the day in which farmers went to their local town or village to hire farmhands to help bring in the harvest, which at this point would be reaching peak output, which means it's harvesting time, right? By focusing on a single unnamed individual, it would immediately bring a sense of intrigue and mystery to the poem and indicate that the subject matter is specific to one person rather than to anything else. Some readers may interpret this as showing an attempt to distance the worker from the narrator of the poem by there not being a name involved, perhaps alluding to some notable event in the relationship between the two. So, what did you understand from this one paragraph, first and foremost?
Mm,
Anything that makes sense in its entirety?
it has like historical background.
Okay. It's related to an old harvest festival, right?
Hmm.
Okay. What else? First and foremost, you need to understand that this poem is written in a more the style of the poem is confessional monologue. It's a genre that recalls dramatic speakers, where a farmer is basically trying to recount disturbing, maybe disturbing series of events following the hiring of a mysterious laborer, right? The Llama's Day, the title itself is referring back to the date, August the 1st. It is the marking the end of summer. It's the harvest festival. It's the beginning of the harvest festival and marking the end of summer. The hireling. What do you think the hireling means? Llamas is August the 1st. What do you think hireling means? Any idea? It's an English term generally. It doesn't really have a historical context as such.
No, I'm not sure.
Hire. A hire is someone you hire to do any sort of work, right?
Hmm.
In this case, a hireling is a laborer who has been employed for the very purpose of the harvest. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
In this case, they are the poet has combined themes of superstition and psychological realism, where they are creating a narrative that is both very ruler and gothic, right? There's gothic aspects as well. If you read the poem again, did you find that there were? And also, there's another thing. If you take a look at the poem at the very last end of it, bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It has been an hour since my last confession. Do you think what this means? Who does this?
Mm, he's like talking to a priest or something.
So Ian Duhig, the poet himself, he's a British poet,
Hmm.
but he draws on Irish folklore. So there's Catholic imagery in our poem. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So this is Catholic imagery. I hope that makes sense.
Hmm.
So if we are talking about the poem in terms of its summary, let's go back at it. After the fair, I'd still a light heart and a heavy purse. He struck so cheap. And cattle doted on him in his time. Mine only dropped heifers fat as cream. Gilles doubled. I grew fond of company that knew when to shut up. Then one night. So you see, it started off well. That's what it's telling us, right?
Yeah.
So the farmer maybe is trying to hint that the presence of the hireling brought sudden prosperity, right? Cattle started to flourish, his own life improved. So he is telling us that he's simply a lonely farmer. He recounts how he hired a very mysterious young man uh, on Lammas Day, on the hiring day, on the harvest day. And he did not really know of this man, right? And he did not really cost him a lot either. And he just knows that as soon as he hired him, his presence started to bring him positivity on his farmland, in his life. Make sense?
Yeah.
However, as we move on, we realize then one night he halts, doesn't he? Begins to feel uneasy. Disturbed from dreams of my dear late wife, I hunted down her torn voice to his pale form. Stuck still in the light from the dark lantern, stark naked, but for one bloody boot of foxtrap. I knew him a warlock, a cow with leather horns to go into the hair gets you muckle sorrow. Do you understand what this might mean?
Um.
So he says that one night he woke up with dreams of his late wife. He felt like that he heard his wife's voice, and he goes to the source of the voice, but he comes across the hireling, and the hireling is seemed to be he seems to be stark naked. He seems to be perhaps taking a bath, and he's bathing, right? And he is stark naked. And there seems to be something uncanny about him. There seems to be images around him that speaks of one and one thing only, which is what? To go into the hair gets you muckle sorrow. Witchcraft. Transforming into a hare is a traditional symbol of witchcraft, perhaps particularly if you draw it from Irish folklore. Does that make sense?
mm, what was
Uh,
part of the witchcraft?
sorry? Sorry?
What What was linked to the witchcraft?
The hare. Transforming into a hare. Hare is a
Oh.
kind of a rabbit. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's a rabbit species, right?
Yeah.
Does it make sense so far?
Mm-hmm.
The wisdom runs, muckle care. I leveled and blew the small hour through his heart. The moon came out by its yellow witness. I saw him fur over like a stone mossing. His lovely head thinned, his top lip gathered, his eyes wrote like bread. I carried him. So what happened then? We could say maybe it was rage, it was guilt, it was fear, but whatever it was, maybe the farmer shot and killed the hireling, right?
Yeah.
He is now describing how the hireling's body went limp, right? He then carried him in a sack that grew lighter at every step and dropped him from a bridge. So he threw the body into a stream, maybe into a river. But he believes, what do you think it grew lighter? He believed that maybe the man turned into a hare again. Of course, the man could not have grown lighter in death, right? So maybe he turned back into a hare. Maybe he was a hare all along. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then there was no splash. Now my heard there was no splash literally means that maybe it was too light, and that is why we could hear nothing. Now my herd's elf shot. I don't dream, but spend my nights casting ball from half crowns in my days here. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It has been an hour since my last confession. So he's haunted. He's haunted by guilt. He's haunted by what he's done, and his even his confession feels uncertain because he's more haunted by his own conscience than by the idea of divine forgiveness, right?
Mm-hmm.
We do not know for a fact what the poem is hinting at because there's ambiguity in the narrative of the poem itself. We do not know whether this was actually indeed a supernatural transformation, or it's some sort of a projection of the farmer's guilt. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Any questions so far in terms of understanding the poem itself, Gurshan?
No.
Excuse me. Yeah, all so far so good.
Yeah.
So if we take a look at the language and imagery of the poem, we could simply say that there's, of course, religious diction, right? Religious terminology used, confession, father, sins, this all evokes a Catholic framework. The basics of drawing examples from Catholic imagery, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then, of course, there's the very idea of folklore and animal imagery. The hare is traditionally a witch's familiar. Do you know what a familiar is in witchcraft?
No.
A familiar is actually, you could say, kind of like a witch's or a warlock's assistant, and they are someone who can transform into an animal as well. Generally, in
Mm-hmm.
witchcraft, a rabbit or a hare is a witch's familiar. It symbolizes witchcraft. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And there's also ambiguous imagery right here. I knew him a warlock, a cow with leather horns. It simply means something unnatural or cursed. This is something we often relate with the idea of Lucifer, the goat. Lucifer as a goat with huge horns. Have you seen that image of Lucifer? It's a very, it's a very famous one. No?
I'm not sure.
Okay. And he has also used very sensory imagery. If you can see here, as he kills him, this uh, his lovely head and his top lip gathered, his eyes rose like bread. Does this make sense? It's like it's he is this grotesque beauty. He is intensifying the poem's gothic theme. Isn't that the case?
Yeah.
And in doing so, he's telling us how death came, right?
Mm-hmm.
Any questions so far?
No.
Of course, in terms of themes, we have guilt and confession, we have superstition and rationality, of course. Um, we have transformation and the supernatural. We have maybe also the fact of isolation and repression, because we see that he gets dreams from his late wife, right? He,
Mm-hmm.
he, he seems like a lonely farmer. And maybe his loneliness feeds his obsession. He's starting to see things. Make sense?
Yeah.
Of course, there's idea of religion very deeply embedded in it as well. Any questions so far? We'll go back to the link now.
No.
So we'll take a look at this. There are 4 stanzas in total in the poem, each made up of 6 lines. Enjambment occurs between all of the stanzas to create the effect of ongoing, quick, and frantic speech, with little opportunity to pause for reflection on what has been said. Do you know what enjambment means? It's
Is
a
it like
go on.
punctuation at the end of the line?
Okay, what does it signify?
Um, like I'm not sure.
Okay, so basically, enjambment means there is no punctuation or pause at the end of the line. Even
Mm-hmm.
though our poem is divided into stanzas, it's still there's no end. The end is the end itself. The poem is continuing without giving much thought to the reader, wait and to understand what's going on. Does that make sense? They just continue understanding and going on.
Yeah.
Generally, there is no punctuation. In this case, it does seem to be the way, but it's connecting the sentences together. I hope that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. It's the very idea of run ons in grammar. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really allow us time to stop or to think on what is being said. It's continuing, and we understand the entire poem is just one long thing, and we need to understand it as a whole. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This helps to increase the level of confusion felt by a reader and is one of the reasons why it is initially difficult to understand the meaning of the poem. In addition, the breaks between stanzas often act as hinge points for the poem, particularly between the first and second stanza when the tone shifts to be more mysterious and disturbing. Because it's only the first stanza that started off quite well, where we see a positive start to the poem, but it quickly turns very gothic, very mysterious, very creepy and disturbing, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is a wide mix of different sentence lengths throughout the Lammas Hireling, varying from several lines to only one line or less. Again, this helps to encourage the feeling of confusion and make a reader see the narrator as erratic. We also understand, we delve into the farmer's mind here, right? He is the narrator, and we find someone who seems very confused, right?
Mm-hmm.
He cannot maybe differentiate between what is real and what is not. We for a fact do not know still whether the hireling was actually just only a mysterious lad, or was he actually involved in witchcraft? Was he a warlock for real? Was he killed because he deserved it? Or was it just the narrator masking his own guilt somehow? Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
By ending the poem on one final line, a contrast is shown as comparison to the preceding lines because it feels much more rigid in structure. This can be seen as reflecting the idea of conforming the ideas of church and religion, which are shared through this idea of confession. So you can just simply, because this was the idea of the Catholic Church, that you could just simply wash your sins away through confession. I hope this makes sense.
Yeah.
When skimming the poem, it becomes clear as to how often the word and is repeated at the beginning of a line, occurring at the beginning of 5 lines, particularly in the first stanza. This gives the idea of further building up a story, but could be interpreted by a reader as also indicating this may be a fantasy and unrealistic. This could be seen as a delicate, deliberate choice by Duhig, as this would further make the actions of the narrator seem implausible by the end of the poem and reinforce the confusion of the reader, forcing them to consider the poem more extensively and question their views on the truthfulness and authenticity of the piece. Whether the idea of the poem actually is superstition or there's realism more. Is the narrator of the poem, the farmer, just a lonely old person whose loneliness is now feeding his obsession and is maybe seeing things? He cannot differentiate between right and wrong, or were there actual magical elements at play? Make sense?
Yeah.
So, this is what the structure of the poem reinforces and reflects back. By encouraging the reader to question the authenticity of the narrator's version of events, it raises the interesting question as whether what is written has been too easily trusted. I hope this makes sense, Kushant, so far. All
Mm-hmm.
of it. If it doesn't,
Yeah.
please ask me. It does?
Yeah.
So, using specific word placements helps to continue the sense of confusion, often in relation to the ideas of light, whether that be something physically light in weight or happy and positive connotations. For example, the first line describes a light heart, which may lead to an emptiness in love and emotion, or alternatively, a positive and happy feeling. Similarly, the oxymoron, light from the dark lantern, makes the reader question the effectiveness of the lantern if it is not truly able to show light and clarity of the situation. The very idea and the use of poetic techniques. You understand what an oxymoron is?
Yeah.
So, does this literally mean that it's just a light, it's a lantern throwing on light? Or does it mean that all the light coming from the dark lantern cannot actually unveil the actual situation? Make sense? Cannot give
Mm-hmm.
clarity to the reader?
Mm-hmm.
Acting as a metaphor for the confusing events of the second stanza, which links the idea of the narrator's wife, the hireling, and warlocks all into one section. In addition, describing the moon as a yellow witness is interesting because it could be interpreted as indicating that the light it gives is somehow tainted in contrast to the typically pure color of white, because that's how moonlight is generally represented, right?
Mm-hmm.
Duhigg also utilizes the semantic field of the supernatural, the words such as warlock, night, and dark. This helps to add one of the extra layers of meanings to the poem, as it makes the reader question the reality of the situation, continuing with the general skepticism of the narrative story. Typical These words include danger, mystery, and the unknown, and this would make a reader apprehensive of the situation, but also potentially dismissive that the events took place as described. What is also interesting is the inclusion of the idea of religion in this context, which acts as a positive force against the ideas of the negative supernatural imagery, right? Like I told you, drawing help from religion at the slightest of inconvenience. Make sense?
Mhm.
Then we have personification. It aims to reinforce the theme of the supernatural. For example, the fox trap biting gives the impression that it has been possessed to be given animal or human-like qualities. In addition, how do you, from this example, understand that this is personification?
Because an object is given human like adjectives describing words.
How is it? Can you tell me that clearly?
Because a fox trap can't actually bite.
Yes,
But
exactly.
yeah.
Thank you. That's good. That's good. All right. So, in addition, the description helps the reader um, to focus on this section and opens up the possibility of multiple interpretations. For example, whether this is to stop foxes getting into the farm or to stop people from leaving. So, the entire poem generally actually is based on ambiguity more, right?
Mhm.
Any questions at all, Kurshan?
No, no.
Take a look at this. We take a look at the biography of Duhigg. Can you read this loudly for me, maybe?
Mhm. Ian Duhig was the eighth of 11 children born in London of Irish parents with a liking for poetry. He worked for 15 years with homeless people and has subsequently held fellowships at Lancaster, Leeds, Durham, and Newcastle universities. He first came in prominence of 1987 when his poem 1919 won the National Poetry Competition, a feat he repeated with the Lammas Hireling in 2000. In 1994, Duhigg was named as one of the Poetry's Society New Generation Poets.
Okay.
Since right.
Duhigg is particularly known for his inventive use of language and wide-ranging knowledge over literatures, culture, and history. This gives his poem incredible diversity and range. He often uses traditional forms, but in unexpected ways, while subversive wit and irreverence is a hallmark of much of his work. We'll take a look at this. Key themes and features of this particular poem. Okay, this is very important. I want you to read from here. From here.
The poem is a dramatic monologue telling the story of how the narrator, a farmer, came to hire a young man to help with his cows. The title and the action of hiring a labourer at the fair takes us back to a rural world that dates back to at least 100 years, if not longer. It has echoes of a Thomas Hardy novel, and this archaic quality continues as the poem progresses. The new hired hand proves uncanny good with the cattle, yields doubled,
Mm.
and the cows only give birth to the more
Valuable.
valuable,
Valuable heifers. Heifers are cow babies.
valuable
In
heart.
his affinity with the beast C10, the hireling has an almost magical quality. All seems well until the ominous, then one night at the end of the first stanza, the great generates tension as we look to see what happens next. Suddenly, the narrator reveals he's a widow. He dreams of his wife, fakes, and goes to see the hireling. In a nightmarish scene, the boy suddenly appears like a figure from witchcraft, naked with a frock strap on his ankle as if interrupted in the middle of a dark rite. The narrator knew him a warlock, that is a male equivalent of a witch. Horrified, the narrator shoots him through the heart. By the light of the moon, he watches the body of the hireling transform itself into a hare, one of the most magical creatures in British folklore. His body grows lighter as the narrator takes him in a sack and dumps him into the river. Since the murder, the narrator's luck has run out, his cattle are cursed, and he is haunted by guilt. He passes his time using the metal from coins to create shot for his gun, and in confessing his sins in all likelihood to a Catholic priest. While this summarizes what happens in the poem, the motivations of the narrator, his exact relationship with the hireling, and his relative guilt or innocence are all deeply ambiguous. The ending, with its direct plea, "Bless me, Father," puts us in the role of the priest. But how are we to judge him when he isn't telling us the whole story? In Catholic tradition, to be absolved of your sins, your confession needs to be full and made with the firm purpose of amendment. The narrator's confession is only partial, and maybe that's the reason that it has been an hour since my last confession, if he feels compelled to repeat his story again and again. So, what is it that the narrator isn't telling us? Was he sexually attracted to the hireling? The image of a cow with leather horns, as well as being an old description for a hare, combines the male and female, as does the strange image of the narrator tracking down his wife's torn voice to the hireling's pale form. So is he like maybe the hireling was just a normal man? Was he attracted to the hireling because he misses his wife? Do you understand,
Mm,
Gurshan? This
yeah.
another interpretation of this? Is it the
Mm-hmm.
hireling's company he is so fond of, especially as he knew when to shut up, which means he knew when to stop speaking, which is also into a direct contrast with how women used to be back at the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does the narrator's desire for the hireling surface in the word lovely? What, when it comes to it, happened to the wife? Did he kill his wife, maybe? Maybe that's why he feels guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Was she really dear to the narrator? Is the narrator in sound mind, or has his subconscious, disturbed by his feelings, conjured up a demonic image of the hireling? The poem deals in transgression, exploring the boundary between the real and the supernatural, the animal and the human, male and female, guilt and innocence, life and death, walking and sleeping, sanity and madness. The narrator uses the word disturbed at the start of the second stanza, and it's certainly the case that the poem itself has a disturbing power. The unreliability of its narrator drawing us back again and again, as in the best ghost stories, to try and work out what actually happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you follow Groshan?
Yeah.
Okay. I think we will stop at this particular poem at this point because we have to move on to the rest of them as well, right?
Yeah.
So, no problems, no questions whatsoever so far?
No.
All right.